Welcome to Downshift. My name is Matt and this is the Honda Pilot, and you've seen the best and the rest of this car, but today, thanks to our friends at Rust-Aero Honda, we're going to take a deeper dive and I'm going to show you everything that you need to know about this Pilot. So let's get into it. We're going to start with the changes and what's new for 2024. Last year in 23 was a completely new generation for this Pilot, and for 2024 there's not really anything that I could find that's different for it. Even on Honda's website they don't have an updated press release for 24. So same vehicle from last year, and to be honest that's perfectly fine. But if it didn't change for this year, let's talk about the changes from last year, or the previous generation perhaps. So all the changes they made last year were to make it more competitive. The segment continues to grow, the family 3 rows, unibodies that is, and get bigger, more competitors and more size. So the Pilot grew as well. It's now longer, wider, and taller, and that means more practicality inside. But then what's under the hood? You only have one engine option for the Pilot. It's a pretty good engine though. It's a 3.5 liter naturally aspirated V6, 285 horsepower, 262 pound-feet of torque. You get a 10-speed automatic transmission, not a CVT, and you do 0 to 60 in about 7 seconds, so that's pretty good. The only thing that I don't love about under the hood here is the fact that you still get a prop rod. I'd like to see struts on their flagship big 3-row. And then talking on drivetrain, now you get front-wheel drive as standard with your Honda Pilot, but you get an all-wheel drive option. And interestingly, all-wheel drive is standard for your top Elite trim. This is a touring that we're in here, so the Elite is just a little bit higher, and also the fully off-road ready Pilot Trailsport gets all-wheel drive as standard. And in terms of fuel economy, since you only have that one engine option, you don't get a hybrid, you don't get a plug-in hybrid, and you're gonna get 21 mpg combined. Not great, that's kind of at the lower end of the segment, but again, for that character from the V6, that's the price you pay. And then in terms of styling, I really like the look of the Pilot. Everything is trying to be a little bit polarizing, a little bit crazy to stand out, but this stands out because it's just kind of classically handsome. You've got a pretty simple hexagonal grille with almost a Grand Highlander-esque chrome strip across the top. I think this may have come out before the Grand Highlander, so I don't know who cheated on who or who stole from who, but you can see you have actual aero bits hiding under your chrome fangs. You got a little silver treatment, a little, I don't know, skid plate looking thing down there, but you do have LED headlights as standard, and you can get LED fog lights as well. Around the side, you're looking at 20-inch wheels. They do change depending on what trim you get, but the Touring here gets 20-inch wheels. But let's take a look at the profile itself. Now, just like the front, it's very simple. It's very classic SUV. You're not getting a tapering roof, and that really translates to more practical space on the inside, which we'll talk about in a minute. But look at these chrome treatments down at the bottom of your door. Also on just the lower portion of your window treatments, the upper portion is black. You've also got black roof rails, panoramic roof, which we'll talk about. You also have keyless or touch sensitive entry on the back. That's a pretty luxe feature. That's not to be taken for granted. And then around the back, you have your classic crabby grabby tail lights, Touring designation, Pilot in black script across the back tailgate, and of course dual exhaust and a trailer hitch receiver. And speaking of this hitch, front-wheel drive Pilots are good for 3,500 pounds, where all-wheel drive Pilots are good for 5,000 pounds, and that is bang on, right about competitive for the segment. And then the trunk, I'm told it's kick gesture. And it is. I always have a hard time with that, so I like to see that it works here. Now the kick, supposedly, I've heard is only for the Elite, but this is a touring trim and yet it works. We also do have a power trunk, but no close and lock. That's a bit of a bummer. But in here is a pretty good sized trunk. We've got a little bit of a little divot so you can put your privacy cover in. You've got a little 12 volt here, and you've also got this button here. Now that I've hit it, if I walk away from the car, it will close itself. That is pretty cool. Very, very interesting. But back inside, we're looking here with the 3rd row up. You're going to get about 18.6 cubic feet of space. This is decent. It's kind of competitive for the rest of the segment. You do fold the seats by pulling on this and then pushing them forward. So they're manual. It's kind of exactly how they work. They have worked for a long time. But it's easy to use, it's quick, and it's not going to break. And with the 2nd row down, you can see about 48.5 cubic feet of space. And if you were to fold the 2nd row down, you get 87. And that is near class-leading figures. The Atlas and the Grand Highlander will technically have more, but what they don't have is under here. You have huge underfloor storage, and you can take out the center seat from the 2nd row and even store it under your trunk. That is super cool. And one thing to also mention, this is a dealer accessory that you can add in but when you do have it folded open like this, you can't grab the handles to get your third row back up. So just something to note. But I mean, look at this, is just kind of cool, isn't it? And then to get into the third row, it's as easy as pushing this button. It'll mechanically whir itself out of the way. The space that you put your foot is a little bit small, but I think it's okay. But looking at the third row here, it's decent. It is not the biggest in the segment, to be honest. But anyway, you do have 3 different seat belts. So you can actually sit 3 people back here, unlike the Lexus TX or the Lexus Texas. But keep in mind, I'm 6'1". This seat is just about all the way back. And yet I still have an inch or 2 of knee room. My knees are up a little bit high. The floor is a little bit high, but ultimately it's relatively comfortable back here. I've got enough headroom, actually a surprising amount of headroom, which is pretty good. I've also got a vent, USB-C, double cup holders, and the same thing on the other side. So the third row is not bad, it's just not the biggest versus a Grand Highlander or an Atlas. And then we'll check out the second row, but not before we take a look at the fact that you have sunshades back here, you've got some thoughtful cup holders and storage cubbies, and it's just pretty nice. The materials are pretty good. You've got the Pilot kick plate. We'll get in though. Again, I'm 6'1", second row. You are going to have marginally less space than in a Palisade and a Telluride. Of course, the Atlas and the Grand Highlander are going to have more, but look at this. I've got a sliding seat. I can also recline, which is pretty good. And then I've got pockets with a dedicated phone little outlet. That's nice. Vents, climate controls back here. You can get heated seats back here. You cannot get cooled seats back here, but you've got dual USB-Cs, and of course, a big panoramic roof. And like we showed you before, that middle seat, that's under the trunk floor. And now you can get back to the third row pretty easily. So that's pretty nice. And then for the front seats, again, pretty nice. I like the leather, the gray interior makes it feel a little bit bigger in here, which is nice. You do get 3-level heated seats. You can see it here. If you want cooled seats, you do have to go all the way up to the Elite trim. That's the top trim. That's the only way you're gonna get cooled front seats. But you do also have 2-level driver memory, and you do have a heated steering wheel. And then just touching really quickly on interior design. It's a very clean design. As you can see, the materials, the leathers, the build is pretty impressive. It's definitely on the upper side or upper half of the segment, so I like that. And there's loads of storage. I mean, look how big that center console is with your wireless charger. You've got room for cup holders and expanders. You've got this thoughtful dash cubby, which is nice and rubberized. You've got more cup holders in your door. So it's just thoughtfully put together for families, and it's thoughtfully integrated for colder climates. So you've got physical climate control. So if you've got gloves on, it's easier to use. They haven't buried it in a screen, and I just like that. And then we'll talk about technology. Now, you only get a head-up display in your top Elite trim, but you do have a fully digital instrument cluster. It's 10.25 inches. It doesn't change a whole lot, but it changes enough to be, kind of helpful. The funny thing is when you get to your infotainment screen, this is usually the big screen, and the base screen is 7 inches. Remember, this is 10.25. And the upgrade screen, which is what we have here in the touring trim, is 9 inches. So still smaller than your cluster, but it definitely still works. You do not get 360 camera for your touring trim. You have to go either to your top Elite trim, or you have to go for the off-road trail sports. You can see some trail cameras that way. That's their thought process anyway. But if you go for the bigger 9-inch screen or a trim with it, then you can get wireless Apple CarPlay. A lot of competitors are giving wireless CarPlay as standard, but at least you have it here. And you've got this feature called Cabin Talk, which is basically going to use the microphones in the ceiling or wherever they are to then project my voice into the third row, so I don't have to turn around and yell at my kids and take my eyes off the road, because that would be unsafe, obviously. So that's a nice feature to have. And then in terms of your safety suite, your Honda sensing is pretty good. We haven't had a whole lot of time to test this thing, but hopefully we can later in the year and do a little bit more robust tests so we can speak more in depth to this. But base testing, it is pretty good. And the last thing, as it always is price. And the Honda Pilot starts at $37,090. This touring trim is just under $52,000. If you go for the Elite, you can expect to pay up to $55,000, which then puts it in line with something like a Palisade Calligraphy or a Telluride, whatever their top trim is called. So price-wise, it is in line, but that's enough talk. Let's go for a drive. Okay. Here we go, into sport mode. Pilot. I mean, that's not bad, is it? 60 miles an hour at the top of third gear. This is the whole thing. It may not be at the best fuel economy, it may be an older engine, but it has kind of the most character. This is the best to drive, unless you want to go and spend Mazda money with their inline six. But from a driver's perspective, if you're not paying all that money for the Mazda, like, this is the most dynamic. You get the most character from the engine. The steering is really kind of devoid of feel or feedback, but it responds in the way that I want it to. And then Honda's all-wheel drive system here has like a torque vectoring magical system that actually makes the car feel like it wants to rotate in a more organic fashion than just push with the front end. So I think that is really, really pretty nice what you get here. But when you're not pretending to be a race car driver and you just want to be a normal person, it does that really well too. There's maybe a little bit more cabin noise coming in than I was expecting, but the visibility out the front and the sides is excellent. This is a little bit small through the rear view mirror, but it is objectively just easy. You sit up nice and high, the driving position is really natural, it feels comfortable. It feels like you get in and you're like, immediately know how to operate this thing, and that's not something that I feel with every car that I get into. So this feels pretty natural, pretty organic, and I like it for that. The suspension is soft enough to be comfortable, but it is firmer a little bit, and I'm saying this is marginal, kind of splitting hairs, than a lot of the other competition like a Palisade or a Telluride. So it does have a little bit more of that dynamic personality perhaps than the uber comfy, you know, wafty SUV for the family. So I guess without talking in circles, this is the best driving of any of the major 3-row SUVs that we've talked about today. So good job, Honda. Thanks for letting us have a go, Rustero, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.